Ohio State decimated Oregon. No two ways about this in the Rose Bowl. 41-21. If you can win a game by 20 and still not have it as close as the final score indicates, that was this game. Because this thing was 34-0. This made my mind go to some dark, dark places. This was the Harambe of college football. You remember Harambe? You remember the late gorilla at the Cincinnati Zoo who was just minding his own business, and then a kid jumps in his enclosure, and what did they do? They had to kill the gorilla. One of many reasons I'm anti-zoo. Oregon just fell in the enclosure yesterday, but no one was there to put him down. And Ohio State just did what they've been doing now. This is Ohio State. This is who they are. They ran it up on Tennessee. They ran it up on Oregon. It was bad. I will say the one thing standing on the field there at the Rose Bowl that was really jarring was sometimes when you see blowouts in college football, it's like a four-quarter thing. It's where attrition and winning on the line of scrimmage and just the totality of bigger, faster, stronger, better depth over the span of 4 quarters, it wears on you, and eventually you win it, and the other team eventually breaks, but that's a 4-quarter project. And you suffer. They make you suffer. Ohio State makes nobody suffer. It's just quick. It's decisive. You're gone before you ever even knew what was coming. That was Oregon. That was me standing there watching Oregon yesterday. They're gone. They're done before you ever even knew what was coming. I had a Emeka Egbuka catching a touchdown pass in front of me. It's 14-0. Everyone, you can read their mouths from sideline to sideline is like, oh no, or oh yes. That was my experience. Still a great experience. The colors clashing, the sun off the mountains, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. Copy-paste Rose Bowl propaganda, which I happily traffic in. But they turned the first game inside out. That's what Ohio State did. So the first game, as you'll recall, Oregon won it. And the first game, Ohio State could not get to Dylan Gabriel. And they got to him yesterday, friends. Now, they got to him pretty much all afternoon. Thorough confusion, as far as I could tell, on the Oregon sideline. 8 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. They didn't sack that dude one time when they played in Eugene. Ohio State outrushed Oregon 181 to -23. Ohio State goes further on their opening drive than Oregon goes in their first half dozen drives. All these are padlock stats, obviously, so there's a triple paper pop on that one. Paper pops, if you're unfamiliar, it's a kind of emphatic stat that tells you all you need to know. And by the way, if you're new around here, I would humbly ask that you subscribe to the channel or the podcast if you're listening there, because this is nothing but college football, and it's free all year long. And we would love to continue doing it that way. And subscriptions, they are our currency, and it's free for you. It doesn't sign you up for anything. It just helps us. So please and thank you. I misread this game. I saw Chip Kelly on the field last night afterwards, and all he had to do is give me a look. I walked up, and I got the look, and it's the look of someone who wants to tell you, man, you whiffed on this one. But they're being nice about it, so you just beat them to the punch. You know, because they only chase if you run. So if you make a bad pick on a game, you just got to lay it out there. And I admitted to him yet again, he's better at his job than I would ever be. And also, I thought, ignorantly, as it turns out, that the first time around when they outrushed them and they ran the ball well in the first half and then they got shut down in the second half, they'd look to rectify that. And even though they threw the ball all over Tennessee, I really thought the game plan they dialed up against Oregon maybe a little bit differently. No. To their credit, and to my mild surprise, I don't know why I was surprised, but to my mild surprise, but to Ohio State's credit, they just let their horses run. And when yours are faster and stronger than theirs, when yours are Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, etc., you really don't need anything past that, as it turns out. Just let them run. Because as Meemaw used to always tell us, there's no defense against an alien. And they've got at least one of them at Ohio State. He wears number 4. Amazing player. I know what it looks like on TV. It's even more jaw-dropping in person. Some of that stuff, I mean, the first touchdown, just a little dump pass. Will Howard, we're just, hey, let him feel the ball leave his hand. Just give him something easy. Just check it down. 50, 60 yards to the house. Yeah, it was a long afternoon, guys. It was a long afternoon for the team in green. Good-looking uniforms, but it was a long afternoon. So I misread it part one in thinking that Chip Kelly would go about his play calling a different way. I misread it part two in thinking that because they didn't get to Gabriel the first game, that Jim Knowles would look at it the second time around and say, I'm not going full feast or famine. I'm not going to go after him. I'm going to make them sustain long drives. Jim Knowles looked at that and said, LOL, and then they just got after him. And it wasn't like they were sending the house all afternoon either. The defensive line, frankly, played the way that most people, including me, thought they'd play all year. Like, I picked this team to win the national title back in the summer because I thought this was the level of play they'd get. But you know what else? There was a lot of talk about the Michigan game, which I know is just a dirty word now, but there was a lot of talk about the Michigan game afterwards and whether or not Ohio State needed that. You can't go back in time and change the past. The mark of a winner is you learn from and grow from your mistakes. If that's what they needed to remind themselves of who they are and what they're capable of, it's puzzling to me, but I'll accept it. Because if it's going to bring this out in you, then whatever. I know there's a little void in your heart, even if you go on to win a title by 1,000,000, that you can't fill unless you beat Michigan, although a national title would be a nice consolation prize. But if that's what it took to wake this team up and to pull the complete, animalistic nature out of them that we're seeing now, so be it. But they did not, offensively or defensively, really come in with the plan that I thought they would. And they were 2 for 2 in the way they went about it. And I don't know if my way would have worked or not, but it's a moot point. Where is Oregon? Where's Oregon? Dan Lanning said yesterday, sometimes you have it and sometimes you don't. And we didn't have it and they did. And it's so funny because he was asked about Ohio State, Michigan. He was asked, how did a team that lost to Michigan suddenly look like this? And then Lanning says, well, we didn't have ours today just like they didn't have theirs against Michigan. I saw someone just clipped that quote, which was totally out of context. Shocker. An internet shocker. A clip taken out of context. But he's right about that. I mean, we saw with our own eyes this team beat that team earlier this year. And yesterday looked like they could have played the game 100 times, and it would not have happened. You would have gotten 100 out of 100. Maybe that's not true, but it looked that way. It felt that way. But here's what's crazy about it all. I saw folks just dumping on Dan Lanning in Oregon and not even realizing Oregon probably wins the national title if this was 1 year ago. If they have this team 1 year ago in the old format, they probably win the title. Because as the ranking stood, Ohio State doesn't even make it in. So how far away is he? How far away is a team that loses like that? It is my belief that you're never as far away as a result like this makes it look like you are. Because we score in 3s and we score in 7s, and especially, it's like watching a NASCAR race. It's way different than driving, in 8-lane traffic downtown where your peak speed is 30 miles an hour. When you're on Talladega, when you're at Pocono, do they still run at Pocono? I don't know. Anyway, super speedway. You're upwards of 190 miles an hour. So if you're off pace even a little bit, if something's wrong with your car even a little bit, and you just drop down to 170, it's like you disappear off the screen because the speeds are so high that any mild variance, any subtle flaw sticks out like a sore thumb, and you're gone, and then you're lapped. Well, when you're playing teams like Ohio State, that is the equivalent of a finely tuned automobile going 190 miles an hour. Now, hopefully yours can go that fast as well. But if it's off, if there's a wobbly tire, if there's anything that's the least bit wrong, you're going to get embarrassed. Because the margins are not like that of an Iowa versus Northwestern game. Again, mountains of respect to both of those programs. But the caliber of football and the style of football you'd be watching there is such that if you don't bring your A game, the final score may still be 16-13 or something like that, 13-9. If you don't bring it against Ohio State, it is 34-0, and the knife's in the side of your neck, and you have no clue what just hit you. So they got 2 more to go. Ohio State's got 2 more to go. The benefit of this format for Ohio State is it literally gave them second life, because the previous format would not have had them in, and we'd be sitting here asking ourselves, after they undressed someone in a bowl game, could Ohio State have won the title if we had an expanded playoff? Well, we've got an expanded playoff. They can win the title. They're the current odds-on favorite at FanDuel to win the title. But here's the thing. As much as this format benefits Ohio State in giving them an access door, it also requires them to play 2 more games. Now, you may look at that and say, hey, who cares? If they're playing like they've played these past 2 games, then they'll cakewalk to the title. They sure will, if they play like they've played these last 2 games. So the struggle for Ohio State was always going to be, just like it is with anybody who had to play 4 rounds, but especially with this draw, they were going to have to beat 4 high-level teams. They didn't get the Boise's and the Indianas. They didn't get SMU. They got Tennessee. They got Oregon. They've now got Texas. And they'll face either Penn State or Notre Dame in the final if they make it there. And if you do not bring it at that high a level 4 times in a row, you will lose one of these games. I know it sounds really impossible right now. This is not an invincible team. It's just a red-hot team that's the most talented team by a wide margin. It's got the best roster by a fairly wide margin that's left in the tournament. I would want to be in no other shoes than Ryan Day's shoes right now. Please do not misunderstand me. You just got to bring it 2 more times. Now, as much as I said that, that's just me trying to be cautious. Because I'll tell you what the vibe around that team was. I was around them a fair amount last night. That vibe is very eerily similar to 2019 LSU. I'm not meaning that to compare the teams. Forget about comparing the teams. That's always dumb. I'm saying the vibe around 2024 Ohio State right now is very similar to when LSU got on a roll, because it was just like a buzzsaw rolling downhill, and it turned out there was no point spread big enough. There was no obstacle that was anywhere near high enough. They just steamrolled everything and everyone. They went past Georgia. Oklahoma, they splattered them all over Atlanta. They go play Clemson in the title game in the Superdome. Pretty easy work. There's just nothing that anyone could do. And you end up feeling like Oregon felt last night. You had a good season. You had no shot. Oregon had no shot against them. If this is that kind of 2019 LSU vibe, then Ohio State's going to win the national championship. They got 2 more games. They got to sustain this level of performance for 2 more games. And title will be theirs. Remember, this is not a tournament that now has Nick Saban in it. This is not a tournament where Kirby Smart's still in it. We've got Ryan Day, we've got Steve Sarkisian, we've got James Franklin, and we got Marcus Freeman. None of those guys have ever won a title. We are now guaranteed to have a first-time national title-winning head coach. And mind you, I think I've heard it about Day, I've heard it about Franklin, I've heard it about Freeman. Have I heard it about Sark? I've heard at least 3 out of these 4 guys can't win a title. Can't win it. So you guys better hope Sark wins one. And that's if you haven't trash-talked Sark, because some of you, oh yeah, we're 4 for 4. Let's just call it like it is. Someone who cannot win a national title, according to the internet, is about to win a national title. And all the tweets that will be deleted. I'm not deleting mine. I picked Georgia to win the whole thing. It's done. It's not looking good for me right now. But as we all know, in times like these, the protocol around here is that I prefer credit and not blame. And so the protocol around here is, henceforth, I want us reverting back to my preseason predictions as the prediction of record. Jesse, remind me, who did I pick to win the national title in the preseason? It was Ohio State. Oh, that's crazy. Okay, so lucky me. Due to the new rules instituted moments ago, I had very little to do with it, but rules are rules, as we know. My pick to win the national championship is now favored to win the national championship. It's crazy how quickly this game can turn.